When you're flying your quadcopter and you're out of packs, what is the best way to field charge? Is it a plug run off your car battery like this? Maybe the answer is just to buy more freaking batteries so you don't run out in the first place. Don't be stupid. Obviously, the smart thing to do is to get one of these lead acid batteries, which are really economical watt for watt and have the side benefit of giving you a good workout. Or maybe you'd rather spend $1,000 on something like this ReLiOn lithium iron phosphate battery pack. That's what we're gonna do in this video. We're gonna run down the main ways that you could field charge, go over the pros and cons of each of them, and talk about which is the best value, dollar per watt, per pound. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're gonna learn something today. All of the products that you see in this video were purchased by me or loaned to me by friends here in Knoxville, except for the ReLiOn Outlaw 772S and the ReLiOn RB100HP battery. These were given to me by ReLiOn. I have not received any other compensation in exchange for this video, and no one has had any approval or control over the contents of this video. Whenever we talk about field charging, we got to at least acknowledge that maybe the smartest way to field charge is to not field charge at all. Just get more flight packs, charge them the night before you go, and then take them with you, and when you want to fly, just grab another fully charged pack out of your backpack and be ready to go. And the big reason we don't do that is price. And of course, comparing the price versus performance of these different methods is going to be a big part of this video. So let's talk about the methodology that we're going to use to compare these methods, because there's a lot of misunderstandings out there about batteries and battery performance. And I know this because I've posted about this video on Facebook, and people have come back to me and said, "Brah, here is a 20,000 milliamp hour battery pack for $40. It's a great deal." No. When you go and you look at a 20,000 milliamp hour USB power bank, milliamp hours doesn't tell the whole tale, because milliamp hours, it has to be multiplied by the voltage of the cells of the pack in order to find out the true energy capacity of the pack. So those little 1S, 20,000, 50,000 milliamp hour battery banks that you can get for 50 bucks or something, those things are only at 1S voltage, 3.7 volts, and their actual energy capacity is actually not that high. Here we've got a 6S 1,000 milliamp hour, and that's going to be 22.2 watt hours. You can't read it probably, but 22.2 watt hours. So the way that we're going to compare these batteries is to compare the watt hours, which is the total energy capacity independent of the voltage. And that is the only meaningful way to compare batteries of different voltages. So, like I said here, we've got 22.2 watt hours. We'll just round it to 22 watt hours. This is a typical 1,000 milliamp hour 6S battery. You might spend, let's say you could spend 25 bucks typically for a pack like this, or if you're buying ultra premium high C race packs, Tattoo, R-Line, and so forth, maybe you pay as much as 40 or maybe 45 bucks. Based on those numbers, this works out to about $1.13 to $1.81 per watt hour. And that's how we're going to compare all of the methods that we're going to talk about in this video. We're going to compare dollars per watt hour. And as you're going to see, we can do a lot better, because we don't need ultra high C rating and so forth. We don't need that stuff from our field charging pack. But if you have the money, if you just can buy more flight packs, that's what you should do. Why take a charger with you into the field? Why take all this complexity of having to charge your packs up? Just grab another pack, go fly. Carry 30 flight packs with you, who cares, if you have the money. But wait a minute, just because you're buying LiPos doesn't mean you have to buy flight packs. You can get a 20,000 milliamp hour 6S LiPo from hobbyking.com for about 200 bucks. That's 444 watt hours, and it works out to 44 cents per watt hour. That's at least 1/4 the price per watt hour compared to buying flight packs. And yeah, sure, it weighs 4 pounds, but you're not going to fly it anyway. And yeah, sure, it's only 12C, but 12C at 20,000 milliamp hours is plenty of amps to charge batteries off of. Downsides of this approach, basically it comes down to how comfortable you are handling and owning gigongous lipos. If a 1300 milliamp hour lipo lights off, it's bad. If a 20,000 milliamp hour lipo lights off, it's really bad. And if you kill a cell on one of your flight packs, you're out 20, 30, maybe 40 bucks. It's bad. But if you kill a cell on a 22,000 milliamp hour, $200 battery, that's even worse. What about charging off your vehicle? If you've got a vehicle, then this might be the most obvious choice. If you don't have a vehicle, if you take public transport, or if you ride your electric skateboard to your flight location, this isn't going to be an option for you. Now, this is a weird one because as far as cost goes, what does it cost? I don't know. You already own a car. You already bought the car. So in that sense, it costs you nothing. You burn a little bit of gas idling your engine while you're charging, but you know, this is probably only a couple bucks depending on where you live and how expensive gas is, so probably this is going to be one of the most economical options. Downsides of this one though? Well, if you're charging in your engine bay, and you should be, because if a LiPo battery lights on fire, you don't want it to happen inside the cabin of your car. If you're charging in your engine bay, then if a LiPo battery lights on fire, you're lighting your engine bay on fire, and I guess that's a little better, but still not that great. Yeah, you could get an extension cord, some kind of extension cable, and charge further out, but you're gonna get a lot of voltage drop, and we're only dealing with 12 or 13 volts to begin with, so you're not gonna be doing real great there. It's gonna be big, thick wire. I assume, by the way, that you're running your engine, and you probably should, because the batteries in automobiles are designed for starting. They're not designed for deep discharge. And so you're not gonna get as many charges as you think off your car battery before it's too dead to actually start your car. And then you're in a really bad situation. And all that money that you're saving by not buying some other field charging method is gonna go right out the window the first time you kill your car battery and you have to replace it because you were charging packs and weren't paying attention to the voltage. One final thought about this method: if you're not flying near where you're parking, this isn't gonna work for you. And that's not always gonna be true. If you're a fan of internal combustion engines, but you don't like the idea of charging off of your car, you can pick up one of these. Hang on. Now I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably thinking that generators are too expensive to really be in the running here. I mean, sure, if you've already got a generator, good for you. This costs $250 at Walmart.com. And I've seen a bunch of other ones. These Bargain Harbor Freight, these bargain basement generators, 800 watts output, 250 to 300 bucks, pure sine wave. Like legit real sine wave generators. And I know people who've been using these for a couple years and they're still going strong. Is it the same quality as a Honda that you'd pay $1,000 for? No, but it can get the job done. It's not even that heavy. Weighs about 30 pounds. So you're not gonna take it on a long hike, but carrying it from the parking lot to the pit, not a big deal. Main downside, noise, obviously. Solution, get a big long 100-foot extension cord and just set it far away. Now, the 250 to 300 bucks is the upfront cost, and anytime you're putting gasoline in something, you also kind of got to think about the running cost. Obviously, charging batteries at home also costs you something, but electricity is so cheap most places that it's just a few cents and you don't even think about it. And that's more or less true for this guy. I was able to discharge about 1,200 watt hours into this off a gallon of gas. So how does that work out? It works out to about, let's say it was $3 a gallon. I don't know. It works out to pennies. It's not very much. And the convenience is going to be worth it for some people. On the flip side, if you're not a person who is comfortable with gasoline engines, if you don't have like a truck or a trailer, carrying this in your vehicle cabin, the whole thing smells like gas. You just got to do the whole trip with your windows down. And I don't know about you, but once every couple of years, I got to send my lawnmower off to the shop to get the carburetor cleaned or whatever they do, because it just stops working. And I know, it's so easy to clean the carburetor, Bardwell, why don't you just do it yourself? I know, but if you're not comfortable with internal combustion engines, you don't like burning gasoline, or you don't like the noise, this isn't going to be the solution for you. What about the old standby? Good old lead acid deep cycle battery. Now it's really important that we distinguish that this is a deep cycle battery. I talked earlier about how your car's battery is made for starting, not deep discharge. And you can't charge very many packs off your car's starter battery. This is a deep cycle battery, and that means it is designed for deep discharge. For perspective, I did a discharge test where I got 599 watt hours discharging this battery down to 12.2 volts, which is about 80% depth of discharge, and that is what is recommended for the longest cycle life. You can go a little lower, but you'll have much shorter cycle life. This battery costs $134 at my local Tractor Supply, which works out to 22 cents per watt hour. So it's super cheap, and you can charge super long off of it. Downsides of this type of battery, other than the weight, there's sulfuric acid in there. Like literally, you can hear it sloshing when I move it. It's sealed, but if it leaks, you got sulfuric acid, and you kind of are supposed to keep it upright. You're not supposed to tip it over, so you gotta be a little bit careful with it. The other one, I guess, is maintenance. This type of battery, if you store it for a long time, you gotta keep it topped off. You gotta keep it trickle charged. You can't just, like with a LiPo, put it at storage voltage and leave it for basically forever without it degrading its performance. Now we come to what's definitely going to be the most controversial entry in this roundup. This is the ReLiOn Outlaw 1072S. It is not just a battery, but a full charging solution. It's got USB, USB-C, 12-volt DC, and over here on the back, it has a 120 volt mains AC power, can do up to 1,000 watts continuous at 2,000 watts burst. There is also an EC5 plug. You could just plug your charger directly into this if you were field charging, and you can pull it up to, I think 30 amps is the limit. This is the charging plug. It charges it up to 10 amps, or you can theoretically charge it off this EC5 as well. And it is also set up and ready to go for solar. Now the reason this is going to be controversial is because this costs $1,000. And that works out to about 92 cents per watt hour, which is actually cheaper than buying more field packs. So if you were gonna buy $1,000 worth of 6S flight packs, then this would actually be cheaper, dollars per watt hour, and offer a lot of different functionality. I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't have bought this. I didn't buy this. Like you heard in the disclosure at the beginning of the video, ReLiOn gave this to me. And at first I was like, who would use this? But the fact is, especially as DJI has gotten into the marketplace, there are more and more people in FPV who have a little more money to spend, and this does offer some advantages. And if this isn't for you, ReLiOn also has a set of just batteries, and they're lithium iron chemistry, LiFePO4, lithium ion chemistry. We'll talk in a second about some of the advantages of lithium ion chemistry. You can get a 620 watt hour battery without all the extra charging stuff, just the battery. It costs about $640, which works out to about $1 per watt hour, so it's still pretty expensive, but it's a little less money to get you in the door. Now this guy weighs 30 pounds. That 600 watt hour battery I was telling you about weighs about 15 pounds. So immediately you can see that these are much, much lighter than lead acid. And that's one of the, everything's lighter than lead acid though. The freaking gasoline generator is lighter than lead acid. The real advantage of the lithium iron chemistry is that it is much more stable, much more long lasting, and much safer than LiPos. So typical LiPo, you're gonna get between say 300 to maybe 800 charge cycles. For those who are used to flying FPV, that sounds preposterous because we just destroy our batteries by crashing them before we ever get close. But that's a typical rated lifespan for like some 18650 cells or some good LiPo batteries. For a lead acid deep cycle battery, somewhere between say 800 and maybe 1700 cycles, depending on how well you take care of it. These lithium iron batteries, they're rated for between 4,000 and 7,000 cycles. 4,000 cycles if you go to 100% depth of discharge, 7,000 if you go to 80% depth of discharge. So there's a perspective you can take, and when we go inside to do the final roundup, we'll do this math. There's a perspective you can take where this is, if you count for the lifespan of the product, this is actually a better value. than like buying lipos. But you got to ask yourself, are you going to recharge this thing 7,000 times? Are you still going to know where it is by the time you've used it 7,000 times? It's debatable. Maybe yes, maybe no. So we come to the end of the video, and as always, the question, which one should you buy? And I'm going to try to answer that question by taking into account the lifespan of the product and not just the dollars per watt hour, which we've been looking at so far. So we'll start with the most expensive option, the ReLiOn Outlaw 1072S portable power station. It comes in at $1,000. Now it's going to deliver 921 watt hours, and it's going to deliver between 4,000 and 7,000 charge cycles, depending on how much you discharge it. So let's assume that we're going to go for maximum longevity. We're only going to take 80% depth of discharge. So we'll multiply by 0.8 and we'll get 736 watt hours per charge cycle. And then assuming it makes its rated spec, which we kind of just have to take their word for it, we'll go times 7,000 and we'll get 5.1 million watt hours over the life of the battery. And then we'll divide by, we'll take 1,000, divide by 1,000. Let's do watt hours per dollar, because it's going to be some weird numbers and weird decimals if we don't. So we'll divide by $1,000 and we'll get 5,157 watt hours per dollar over the life of the unit. How does that stack up to the other stuff in this list? Here's the ReLiOn RB100HP. This is the battery that doesn't have the built-in inverter and some of the other fancy stuff that the Outlaw has. I have that, but I lent it to my friend in exchange for him lending me his generator and his lead battery for this video, so I don't have it right here. But it is 620 watt hours. We'll go with that same 80% depth of discharge, and we'll multiply by 7,000 charge cycles, 3.4 million watt hours over its lifespan, and we'll divide by $657 to get 5,284 watt hours per dollar. Again, more is better in this case. Now, before I made this video, I posted about these ReLiOn batteries on Facebook, and I said, do you know of something better? And a lot of people mentioned different 18650 cell battery banks. So let's take a look at a couple of those and see how they stack up. This is the Dendrones battery box. It is rated at 825 watt hours, and it is lithium ion, so it's not using lithium iron phosphate. Now, he rates this for 825 watt hours, and that is not based on a 100% depth of discharge. So he's trying to maximize the number of charge cycles you can get. So we will take 825 watt hours. A typical 18650 cell might be rated for between 300 and 500 cycles. Let's say times 500 cycles, 412,000 watt hours over its lifespan, divided by $600 price is $687.5 over its lifespan. And here you start to see some of the appeal of the lithium iron phosphate chemistry, because this Dendrones battery box compares very similarly to the RB50. They're similar in price. They're around $600, and they're roughly similar in capacity. The Dendrones is 800-ish watt hours. The ReLiOn is 600, so that's not quite the same, but in the ballpark. But the ReLiOn battery is going to last longer and deliver approximately 10 times as many watt hours over its lifespan at about the same price. Well, we see that same pattern play out here with the lead acid battery. It's going to have more life cycles than the lithium ion, and it's way, way cheaper. Let's crunch the numbers. I got 599 watt hours, and that was an 80% discharge. So we're just going to leave that number alone. A typical lifespan for a battery like this, according to a little bit of Googling that I did, you might get as many as 1,700 discharge cycles on a good day. So we'll give the benefit of the doubt, and we'll divide by the price of $135 to get, whoa, 7,524 watt hours per dollar over its life. That is significantly better than the approximately 5,000 for the ReLiOns. And it's way cheaper. So if you're okay with the weight and you're okay with having to maintain it and keep it topped off, this might be the way to go. What about the generator or your car? I'm not even going to try to do a life cycle analysis on those, because Unlike batteries, which have a spec sheet that says how many cycles you can expect to get out of them, I have no idea how many cycles you're going to get out of a generator. I mean, if you put bad gas in it and you foul the carburetor and you don't know how to fix it and you just give up and say the heck with this thing, then you might only get a year of use out of it. If you know how to take good care of a generator, it might last 10 or 20 years, who knows, especially if you know how to repair it. So we're not going to do it for that. The other thing I gotta point out is there were a couple other products that were suggested that didn't quite fit into this video, but I want to make you aware of them. Then if you're cross-shopping some of these things, you should definitely check some of these out. The first one is this EcoFlow River portable power station, and it compares to the Outlaw in a lot of ways, in that it does have AC outlets, so it's not just usable for charging batteries, but you can run any electrical device off it or appliance. It's much smaller than the Outlaw at only 288 watt hours, but it's also significantly less expensive, and if you're a little bit budget constrained, that may get you in the door. Worth pointing out that it is lithium polymer technology, so you're only going to get those 300 to 500 life cycles instead of the 4,000 to 7,000 of the lithium iron phosphate batteries. There are a ton of different entries in this category that you could be looking at, and there wasn't any time in this video to include all of them. If you want to do the math on these yourself, two things to keep in mind. Number one, always calculate based on watt hours, not milliamp hours or amp hours, because you don't know the voltage of the internal battery. You must compare and shop based on watt hours. The other thing to keep in mind is that as you're comparing the life cycle, most of these are going to be based on lithium polymer, and so they're only going to get that 300 to 500 cycles, whereas a lithium iron phosphate battery is going to be much more expensive but last much longer. There are links to all of these products down in the video description, and yes, they are affiliate links. What that means is that if you click that affiliate link and make any purchase at the store, I get a small commission. It's an easy way for you to support the channel. Doesn't cost you anything. Just click the affiliate link, do your shopping, check out. I get a little commission. Which one do you think is the best? Tell me in the comments. I'd like to hear your thoughts about the $1,000 ReLiOn. I'm willing to bet it's going to be like 8 out of 10 people think it's ridiculous, and like 1 or 2 out of 10 people think it's the best thing they've ever seen. Either way you go, I'm happy I could try to help you make up your mind. Thanks for watching. Happy flying. Do you see this baby? Isn't he cute? Hit the subscribe button. Join my Patreon. Use my affiliate links. Or just keep watching videos. That's better than nothing.
Go, go, gaga, subscribe to my daddy.